A key plan for the future of Huntingburg has now been approved. More on the downtown revitalization plan, plus a recent Jasper land purchase could be growing. We'll tell you what's going on there, and District 63 State Representative Mark Messmer is tonight's guest on Inform. All of that and much more is up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. We begin this evening with a plan for the future of the city of Huntingburg's downtown area getting its final approval. Last night, the Huntingburg City Council formally passed a resolution to accept the downtown revitalization plan. The plan, which was done by Development Concepts in collaboration with Commonwealth Engineers, is largely the same as the variation that was presented at a public meeting last month. Some minor changes were made to the plan, and these included removing parts about education, since Huntingburg already has a growing educational institution. Additionally, the parking issue was clarified to reflect a recommendation for better signage for parking in downtown rather than adding new parking. Huntingburg Mayor Denny Spinner says the plan will serve the city well going forward.
I think it's a good roadmap for where we are. And now our responsibility from this point is to take the concepts that are put out there and put them into action. So there's nothing really officially decided as for what these projects will look like in their final phase, but it gives us a framework by which to decide those, and there will be plenty of opportunities for the public to give us input on those projects as they move forward individually.
The plan was made possible through a $40,000 grant given to the city by the Indiana Office of Community and Rural Affairs. That grant was awarded in October of last year. Additional funding came in the form of a $5,000 local match. Half of that money came from the city, and the remaining half was provided courtesy of the Du Bois County Community Foundation. Also last night, the council heard an update from Honeywell Representative James Zellman concerning a cost savings feasibility study for city buildings. Spinner says the plan has largely been focused on a demand response program which is centered around the city's largest corporate energy customers. He says the city is now set to look to see what interest exists for this project.
What this process would allow us to do is to put out a bid to see if there'd be vendors interested in implementing this project, and should the cost savings be something that the utility board would want to go with, then there would be a bid process and a decision made at this point. So really we're at the update point, and a decision on whether or not to implement this program won't come until April.
Zellman is set to come back before the council at their next meeting in 2 weeks. In final notes, the council signed a joint resolution that expresses the city's opposition to the elimination of the business personal property tax in Indiana. The concern continues to be the lack of replacement revenue should the tax be eliminated. Spinner has stated that the city would stand to lose about $300,000 or 17% of the city's budget should no source of replacement revenue be found. Officials in Jasper have pegged losses at $1 million, while Ferdinand town officials have said their losses will be around $125,000 from the budget. District 64 State Representative Lloyd Arnold, who represents the Huntingburg area, is also among those who oppose the tax's elimination. A recent land purchase by the city of Jasper could be getting even bigger if grant money can be secured. Officials with the city and the Du Bois County Community Foundation have been working together to secure up to $300,000 worth of grant money to expand the currently 58-acre Parklands property. The land, which was formerly the Jasper Country Club, was originally bought by the city back in April of last year. Louisville-based City Visions and Boston-based Gamble & Associates have since been working to find uses for the land going forward. Now, if the grant money is awarded, it would be used to purchase just over 25 acres of land adjacent to the Parklands site along North Newton Street. Those properties are currently occupied by 2 different trusts. The Grammel-Spocker Nordhoff Trust owns just over 20 acres of the land, while the Thomas Eversman Trust owns the remaining 5 acres. If that acquisition were to be successful, the site would grow to almost 85 acres. Brad Ward is the executive director of the Du Bois County Community Foundation. He says, if approved, the purchase would be another step to preserving the area for future generations.
The reality is what we're looking at probably the best case scenario is that we have 25 acres of wooded property that is protected into perpetuity in the center of our city. Talk about an amazing asset to hold on to for the next 100+ years. That's a testament to our history from wood manufacturing and just the general nature, the natural, surroundings that we have in our community, but making it accessible in the center of our city. It's almost like a central park.
Ward says officials are currently in private discussions with landowners, the Bicentennial Nature Trust, and private donors to see if the project is a viable one. A dollar-for-dollar local match is required for these types of acquisitions, and Ward says if the funding for a local match is not found by next Friday, the city and community foundation could lose a $35,000 grant that they already have received from the Indiana Heritage Trust. Ward says the Bicentennial Nature Trust is very interested in the land, an interest that's been there for some time. He says all that's left to do now is to raise some money on the community foundation's end. The discussion continues surrounding the formation of a building committee for the Jasper Library. Last night, the Jasper Library Board held its monthly meeting, and the subject of a building committee was discussed, although the discussion was brief. Several board members said they had talked to people they knew might be interested in serving on the committee, only to find out they really didn't want to. Others knew of a couple of people who had expressed interest in serving on the committee. Library Director Rita Douthit says regardless of what the board chooses to do, something has to be done at the Jasper Library.
We did the referendum and we heard what the community said, and we told them that we would work towards something, and I think that we need to do that. Whether we stay where we are, whether we build somewhere else, whether we move somewhere else, something. We need to start moving forward.
Douthit also says any plans would have to be something that everyone would be happy with.
It has to be something that's feasible and affordable, definitely. So, who knows? Until we can get an idea of a plan and maybe modify the plans that we had before and put a price tag to it, we don't know.
Now, nothing was finalized as to the makeup of the committee at last night's meeting, though the board had discussed some possibilities for a format last month. These included having 3 library board members, 3 library staff members, and 3 members of the public as one of the options. The other option was 2 library board members, 2 library staff members, and 5 members of the public. The second idea was the more popular of the 2 ideas at last month's meeting. Board members agreed to send the 5 names that they collected to Douthit, and the board talked about holding special meetings to interview potential building committee members, though nothing was formally decided there. In other business last night, both the Jasper and the Du Bois County Contractual Library Boards heard from Douthit that the library's accounting bookkeeper had resigned. The boards authorized Douthit to look into what it would cost to have an outside group come on site to do bookkeeping work in the short term. There was a bit of debate about the long-term future of that position. Douthit stated that she, along with Contractual Board President Kathy Treader, had discussed outsourcing the job, but Douthit stated that she wanted to hire a new person rather than outsource. In other headlines, a year after setting aside $400 million for long-term highway needs, state legislators are considering breaking that piggy bank open now. Legislators had hoped to keep adding to the highway fund, then use it in 2020 for big-ticket projects. But NDOT says rising gas and labor prices mean the fund's purchasing power is likely to be 20% less by then. NDOT Commissioner Carl Browning says tapping the money now would let NDOT get started on those plans, including a $3 billion plan to loosen bottlenecks on I-65 and 70 by making them 6-lane highways from one end of the state to the other. District 63 State Representative Mark Messmer stopped by the studios here at WJTS earlier today. He says getting the money distributed for road projects now is the best way to use it.
Let's go ahead and block it in and get it spent the next year or two on projects that we know we want to do now and move forward with them. Because putting that $400 million into use and getting those construction projects that NDOT needs to do in the pipeline and moving now is just good for the infrastructure of the state.
Meanwhile, Browning argues spending the money now remains true to the purpose of the fund, since the money would be spent on long-term projects. The House has already voted to open up that fund, and a Senate committee is expected to vote next week. An Indiana House committee has approved a bill supporters say is needed to protect the rights of Hoosier farmers, but opponents say it would give special protections to big agribusinesses. The House Agriculture and Rural Development Committee passed the bill yesterday on a 12-1 vote, sending it to the full House for consideration. The measure passed the Senate last month and includes language stating that Indiana law shall be construed to protect the rights of farmers. The Hoosier Environmental Council says that language has legal ramifications and would shield agribusinesses, such as livestock farms that produce large amounts of manure, from legal liability, regardless of harm that those practices can cause. Republican State Senator Carlin Yoder of Middlebury says his bill simply lets judges know that the General Assembly stands with our farming communities. After weeks of propane shortages and high prices, some relief is coming to rural residents in the Midwest, South, and other areas that have had trouble keeping their heating tanks filled during the bitterly cold winter. The U.S. Energy Information Administration said on Wednesday that residential propane prices have fallen for a second straight week, down from about $4 a gallon in late January to $3.76 a gallon as of Monday. Supplies of the fuel the Energy Department says 5.5 million U.S. households use for heating have improved slightly thanks to efforts by the propane industry, the federal government, and the states. But Propane Education and Research Council President Roy Willis says the nation's propane supply remains low and more blasts of winter cold would quickly send the prices back up. Finally this evening, another trooper with ties to our listening area has been recognized for his services. Indiana State Police Superintendent Douglas Carter announced the recognition of Master Trooper Detective David Henderson. Henderson was honored for 20 years of service to the Indiana State Police. A native of Orleans, Henderson graduated from Orleans High School back in 1989. He then earned an associate's degree in law enforcement from Vincennes University back in 1991. Henderson was part of the 50th Indiana State Police Recruit Academy and graduated from there back in 1993. He was assigned to the Jasper District to patrol Davies, Martin, and Orange counties at that time. Henderson has been involved in several different areas of the department over the years, and these include work with the Problem-Oriented Policing Squad and serving as a crime scene investigator and a defensive tactics instructor. He was promoted to detective back in January of 2010 and serves within the Jasper District. Henderson and his wife Heather reside in Orleans with their 2 children. All right, coming up after the break, your local forecast, sports with Kurt Gooksell, and Inform featuring District 63 State Representative Mark Messmer. That's all up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Local people watching local people.